Welcome to a very special edition of the Hathaway Kunz podcast. My name is Matt Kaufman. I'm a partner with the firm. Today, we're going to spend a little time talking about the history of Hathaway Kunz. We're celebrating a very special 50th anniversary for the firm. With me is also partner Lucas Buckley and another partner, Marianne Shanor. All right, guys, we'll just jump right into it. So maybe to start the conversation, Marianne, obviously the firm is Hathaway Kunz, founded by Stan Hathaway and your dad, Brent Kunz. Could you maybe spend a couple of minutes and just walk us through how Hathaway Kunz came to be and how the partnership was formed initially?
So the partnership really started back in Washington, D.C. My dad, Brent Kunz, worked out for the Department of Interior, and he then went on to work for former U.S. Senator Cliff Hansen of Wyoming. And through his position there, he assisted Governor Stan Hathaway with his nomination to be the Secretary of the Interior. The nomination process was one that was very challenging for Governor Hathaway. And so they formed a relationship, and my dad assisted him and helped him prepare for the confirmation hearings. Governor Hathaway was confirmed to be Secretary of the Interior. However, shortly afterwards, due to the very difficult hearings, he resigned his position and came back to Wyoming. And my dad came back with him. This was in 1975, so 50 years ago. And they came back to Wyoming and decided to start the law firm at that time. So they, didn't really have any clients and it wasn't established at all. And they started the law firm of Hathaway and Kunz.
And this was post, everyone knows that Governor Hathaway was a two-term governor. This was post his governorship and post DC. Did your dad and Stan know each other while Stan was governor?
No, they did not. So they really met back in DC. My dad attended law school at the University of Wyoming, and he decided to take a position as a Solicitor General with the Department of Interior, U.S. Department of Interior, and he was working out there, and Senator Cliff Hansen asked for him to be on his staff. My dad came from a railroad family and was part of a union family. And so when my dad was offered a position with Senator Hansen, he said, "Well, I'm a Democrat, sir. Not sure that you want to hire me." And Senator Hansen wrote on a cocktail napkin the offer to my dad and said, "No, we have good people that work for me." And so my dad worked for the Natural Resource Committee of the U.S. Senate. And then when Stan Hathaway was nominated by President Ford to be Secretary of Interior, my dad helped him through that nomination process. So they did not have a relationship prior to that time.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, and then Lucas, I'm going to bring you in because our law partners, two of them still are law partners. Mike Rosenthal and Rick Thompson were two of the very, very early additions for Hathaway and Kunz. I think maybe Rick was before Mike.
That's right.
They should be here to confirm that. But maybe you could talk to us a little bit about kind of what we know. We weren't there, but the early years of practice of Hathaway and Kunz and kind of what that looked like and who the firm targeted as clients and things.
Right. Yeah. That's all been passed down through lore to us in stories and song. But, Mike and Rick, I think you're right. Rick started first. And, as Marianne said, Stan and Brent started the firm with no clients. Obviously, that didn't last too long. And I think anybody that knew Stan or Brent would understand why that was. Both just, great sort of legal minds, great people to be around. And I think, I would like to think, I hope at least, that, we've inherited kind of a philosophy of kind of pragmatism from them. just an ability to like really work with people, work with their problems, and really address those. So I think they did. It seems to me, as I understand it, got busy quickly. I think always had a strong mineral background. Some of the things that Brent and Stan were both great at were, natural resources and things. And of course, that's great in Wyoming to focus on. But even Rick and Mike, by the time that they started, the firm was branching out more into, civil litigation work, general business advising work. And, I think that's really what Mike in terms of litigation and Rick in terms of business advising really focused on, and did really well for a lot of years. And I think Stan and Brent focused a lot on some of the mineral work, and also just general business advising. It's always interesting because I feel like even when I started at the firm, Stan had passed away, but it's like I knew him and had worked with him because of all the people who would tell me about knowing Stan, working with Stan, and just being able to deal with issues through Stan. And then I was lucky enough, of course, to work with your dad for quite a few years. And he was the same. I mean, we almost laughed to the point of, Brent was great. He worked it through. He really dealt with people well. Certainly was a great legal mind, but also worked on practical issues and wanted to make sure that people were heard, wanted to make sure that, issues got resolved between folks. And I think he was great at that. So I should say, right, the firm having existed longer than I was alive, I obviously wasn't there at the beginning, but we've certainly heard nothing but great stories and information about Stan and Brent and what they did. And, I think we see now the value and the luck we have of being involved with a firm that was around for such a long time and had such a great genesis.
So one of the things that I've reflected on a little bit is I think, or at least I'm proud of the fact that I think we've carried forward a lot of the ethos of Brent and Stan in the early days of practice. And when I say that, I think of things like just the importance they placed on treating clients fairly, on doing what's best for Wyoming, on really, trying to work to propel Wyoming forward and be stewards of that. I'd be curious to get your thoughts, Marianne, on how you think that ethos still lives in the firm, and do we still carry that forward?
I agree completely. I think it's one of the things that differentiates our firm from others is that we care deeply about our clients, about the issues, about making Wyoming, our community, a better place, and making sure that our clients feel that they're, at the center of our attention, solving problems, being involved to help make a difference in Wyoming and propel our clients forward.
And Lucas, similar question for you. I mean, we have the distinguishing factor we're the only two governor firm in the state, right? And on top of that, we have, folks like you with relation to Senator Enzi. We have really close relationships to a lot of really high profile folks in Wyoming. How do you think that's impacted our firm? Do you think that still carries forward, right? Does that stick with our legacy moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. I think what we've always been good at, whether that's talking to, representatives in Washington, the folks who represent us statewide, or, local governments, or just people on the street. One thing that we've always valued is, sure, we can handle large cases, large litigation, large projects, but we've never given up on just doing somebody's will from down the street. And so I think also just dealing with, folks who've never interacted with lawyers before. I've always been pretty proud that we have never made it a situation where you have to be rich to talk to us. We've never been the kind of firm where, you're not going to know who we are because we're always in the, gilded halls of wherever it might be. I think that comes from Stan and Brent. I really do. There's nobody I think that I've ever known that's as easy to talk to or as happy to talk to you as Brent Kunz was. I do contrast that with, again, the story of Stan, which was that while being a great guy, he also had a rule that he had uncomfortable chairs in his office so that when other lawyers would come in, they didn't want to stay long, which I always appreciated as well. I think mostly untrue, but there's probably a nugget of truth in that as well. I mean, Matt, you deal with, especially on, these days, talking about the difference from, the mineral days maybe to the days of digital assets and things. I mean, you're dealing with people kind of on the front edge of technology and emerging sort of legal issues. Where do you see coming from and still wanting to be very much a firm that's, focused on people, focused on doing the right thing? I mean, how do you see that work in kind of the digital asset space? As a growth out of that, or is that something completely different?
No, I actually, that's a great question. I think that it's sort of a carry forward of kind of the legacy in many respects, because the way, at least I see it, is, I mean, Brent and Stan, the early days of the firm, they were doing things that hadn't been done in Wyoming, right? And granted, it was maybe in the mineral industry, a lot of it, or industrial siting, or large projects. Stan was active in the banking space early on, but and I think that carried forward to Mike and Rick and that generation of lawyers. I mean, Rick being a bond attorney in Wyoming, right, and kind of leading the state in that. So to me, a lot of the ways that we've added sort of cutting edge practice areas is super true to the firm's heritage and legacy. And I love that, that's something that Governor Meade, when he was governor, kind of pounded on of, propelling Wyoming forward, moving Wyoming forward, finding new ways to diversify the economy. And I love that our firm, we take that seriously. It's not just something that we say to clients, we actually participate in it, and we really help carry that mission forward.
Well, and Governor Meade, of course, having started as an intern with the firm, I think when he was in law school, I think it does say something about certainly Stan and Brent, but Rick, Mike, I mean, and a ton of other, great partners who have been to the firm, through the firm, and retired or left for, different reasons and are all over the country. But I think it says a lot that, somebody as distinguished as Governor Meade would want to come back to the firm and wants to be a partner with us now. And I really do see that as more of the same, right? It's just doing good work, staying focused, and staying focused on clients.
Yeah,
That makes a difference.
100%.
And I think the founding of the firm is interesting, but right, there's still another 50 years past that. And interestingly, we've been kind of all over town. We were east of town, as Marianne informed me, in the Boyd building, where, as I understand it, Rick lived across the street so that he could make it to work on time every day.
No, that was a Pioneer building.
Okay. Let's hear about that then.
Yeah. So it was initially an office building on the east side of town. Then I believe it was a Boyd building. And then they moved into, I believe it's called the Pioneer building. It's now a state office building that the Attorney General's office is in.
That's right.
And that's where Rick lived across the street.
Okay.
So he could be right on time for work.
Which anyone that knows Rick makes perfect sense. And probably he was upset that other people weren't moving closer to the office. But interestingly, then now we're in the Hanson building, which has gone through, some different lifestyles for us, including what we might all agree were some poor wallpapering choices and color schemes in the past. Anybody can, of course, stop by anytime to see that we've done better. We've grown. But I mean, we've been there for 20, 25 years probably at this point.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I mean, what comes to mind with that is obviously when the firm moved over to the new space, we weren't there at that time, but you're right. I mean, just again, getting back to kind of that ethos of the firm, I don't know, wanting to be accessible, right? Not wanting to be super flashy. It's just kind of in our DNA, I think. But yeah, when we first joined the firm, that only went so far, because at some point we had to get rid of the wallpaper trim and, the purple carpet. But yeah, I think we've done well maintaining nice space and staying modern. We're expanding now across the state, and we're reaching new geographies that we didn't used to.
Yeah, and we've even grown a little bit out of our space, and so we're across the hall in we call it the North Annex. And so that's, it's just been interesting to see how the firm has grown over time. I mean, at some point there were 4 or 5, I think, partner names in the firm's name. And I think, we could do that again. But I think for me, it's always been so important. I think Hathaway Kunz is the place I work, right? And I've joked before that it should be Buckley, Hathaway, Kunz, and Buckley, but I would not do that even if asked, because I think the people that really started it, the people that made it what it is, if it's, and I suppose it is up to me in some ways, their firm should always, or their name should always be on our letterhead, because I just think that's who we are, and to me, the firm name, conveys some more meaning than just a couple names.
So bringing the conversation a little bit more into the modern era, Lucas, you and I joined about a week apart.
That's right.
In 2007, and when we joined, it was Mike, Rick, and Brent still, right? And we were number 4 and 5 at that time. And then Marianne, you were not too far behind us.
Yeah, I joined in 2011.
Yeah. And then fast forward to today, we've got 20-ish lawyers. So we've had a pretty good growth trajectory since then. I remember Brent and Mike and Rick saying that before we kind of stepped into the managerial shoes, I think the biggest Hathaway and Kunz ever was like 10 or 11 lawyers. So that's always really funny to me that we've doubled, the biggest that it ever was pre our era.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was Rick that used to always say, once you get around 10 attorneys, it's too unwieldy to grow anymore. And he might be right. Some days I would certainly agree with him, but I also think that the people we have now, one, it speaks to the fact that we just don't have a lot of turnover. I mean, in our staff or in our attorneys, people stick around, and I hope that's because it's a good place to work and the fun place to be, with its own stresses and challenges at times, of course. But, to me, just the people we work with are really what make it great. I mean, and Marianne, I think you know that better than anybody. You were the runner for the firm at one point, right?
I was, so probably before you started in 2007, but not too much sooner than that. So I would run around the errands and take filings to court, make copies, copy machine. But it was a really great atmosphere, and I was able to also be exposed to some legal work and go to some hearings and different meetings, which was incredibly beneficial for me because it really helped me go the direction that I have and want to be part of the H&K team.
You're in good company. I mean, Rosenthal used to always say, we've got to be one of the few firms that had a couple of gubernatorial candidates, a former governor, a Speaker of the House, county commissioners. I can't remember all the other things, people that have been runners at the firm. So, yeah, you're in good company.
For sure.
Including your daughter as well.
Including my daughter, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well,
And I think that is also something that is important to the firm, is that we've had a lot of great staff over the years, and they really make a big difference for our firm and help us. We're a team, and so I think that it's something that is great as well, goes to our work environment, is that I think that we have a great place to work and our staff feel the same.
So what do you guys think about the trajectory of the firm? Like since we talked a little bit about the inception and the founding of it and the fact that that we've grown, but where does Hathaway and Kunz go from here in our minds? I mean, I don't want to put a time frame on it, but Rick is our most senior active partner, right now, and at some point in time, Rick will decide to retire, and then it's pretty much us three, right? As the next most senior attorneys. So I'm curious what you guys see for the future of Hathaway and Kunz.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with, if you think back, and we were laughing about this earlier, Stan Hathaway thought the practice of law just got too fast. You needed to respond to people too quickly once. And apparently we had the first fax machine in the state was installed. People would fax and expect, an answer within a day or two. Now we're at the point where, it feels like if you don't get back on a text quick enough, you can get in trouble. So I do think things have changed a lot. I think we've weathered those changes. I mean, I think we've always been a firm that looks to leverage technology, mostly on the front end, although I will say our website was a little dated when we started, but we won't go too deep into that. So I think that we continue to work in digital asset spaces. I think that, our focus on, even getting attorneys with LLMs or higher degrees, on, technology and leveraging it through AI. To me, those are things that I think we're good at. I think we have, sort of I don't know if you'd call it traditionalist mindset in terms of, we want to keep to our core values, but I think we can do that, and we're adaptable to use those core values in ever-changing situations. I know that you've done the same. You're at the legislature, as of the time we're recording this, you've been there for about a month and a half. Marianne, what do you think in terms of how just our interaction with the government and being involved in sort of those policy side decisions has changed or will change over time?
So I think, well, and to answer Matt's question first, I think that the firm has always been forward looking, and I really am excited about the future of the firm and the next 50 years, and that we're going to stay the course in what we do. But also to your questions and thoughts is that I think that we do continue to advance, and, all of the different areas will evolve, and we're involved in those discussions, which I think is something that is unique to our firm that not all other Wyoming firms do. We're involved in policy decisions and what those look like for the state. So I'm excited. I think that we're in a great position to continue to serve clients, in the natural resource area, to blockchain, to litigation, to estate planning for the next 50 years. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, listening to you both talk, one of the things that came to mind is I think everyone that came before us was really smart about the things that they said no to, in terms of what areas of law we don't serve and still don't serve, and what kinds of clients we say no thank you to and still say no thank you to. And even I don't want to call out specific practice areas, but right, that was a big formative part of kind of our early years at Hathaway and Kunz was pivoting away from certain kinds of work and looking towards those practice areas that we believed were going to be high growth in the future. And thankfully we were right, in a lot of those decisions. And I get kind of excited about that because I think when our group gets together, we're pretty good at seeing the legal landscape, at least in Wyoming, and where things are going and where things are headed. Like you said, I think we really lean into being a technology forward firm and embracing that. We have a lot of young lawyers, which is really exciting. I think there's a lot of, energy. Our other law partners, Tyler and Sean, bring a tremendous amount of energy and forward looking. All of our associates, just super energetic. So I get really excited about the things we've said no to and kind of focusing on the core aspects where we really think we can be the best. And I think we can continue to do that. So that's exciting to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's been an interesting ride and you're right, that almost the things we say no to, and that frees up our time to do some other things, which, again, I think if you talk about secret sauce, I think some of that has been almost like the network effect of, we're willing to do and we want to do more interesting things. That drives, interesting clients and interesting cases. I think it also drives us getting talent for attorneys, but as well as staff who, I think Marianne, you said, are a huge part of what we do every day. But getting people that really want to do the things that we want to do, and then that all kind of works together to create just this sort of great atmosphere for, I hope, continued growth. But like Governor Meade, I think, told us once, right? Not growth for growth's sake, but, kind of a natural growth that puts us in the places we want to be, kind of positions us to be successful in interesting areas. And again, I guess I won't call out specific, cases or different practice areas, but right, I never wanted to be a lawyer who comes in and, does the same kind of case every day, and then you do it again tomorrow and you do it again tomorrow. I think that every day, sometimes you're running around like your hair's on fire, but it's never boring. And that to me is probably the most important thing, just for what I need day to day. I don't want to be bored. And I mean, I know you guys typically sit around pretty bored, which I feel bad about.
Well, and I mean, to tag on to what you just said, I'm super proud of the fact that, I mean, think about the change of the practice of law just since we've been doing it, I mean, from, as you point out, from the days of us having laptops and depositions that were so loud, we were asked to shut them off, right? To now we're actively training our associates to use AI, to complement their skill sets and to, accelerate productivity and things. And this is wild. I mean, these are things that no one was contemplating a decade ago for the practice of law. So to have gone from, Stan's prediction about the fax machine to where we are now, it's going to be wild to see. But I'm just super proud of our group and just the willingness and the ability of everybody to roll up their sleeves and evolve, change, and stay at the cutting edge. And I think that's one of our distinguishing characteristics as well. So Marianne, maybe you could just share your thoughts and talk a little bit about the way that the legal landscape in Wyoming has changed with respect to those firms that have been around for a long time. Because I mean, we've talked about the landscape of the practice of law changing, but the players have changed a lot too.
Yeah, you're right, Matt. I think that we really are one of just a few Wyoming law firms that have reached the mark of 50 years. Many of the longtime firms have dissolved and are no longer in practice. So I think that it's a unique thing for a firm to make it to this milestone of 50 years.
Yeah. And I was just going to recognize, and again, maybe this is something that the three of us can't really take credit for, but we talk about it a lot, which is our culture, and our firm culture. And that sounds super cliche because I feel like everybody says that. But I also feel like we mean it when we talk about it, right? That we really do try to value people. We really do try to hire people that we think are going to be a good fit and catch the vision. And it's cool to me that we see that in our staff who is, not just excited by what we do, but they feel like they're part of something and they see what we're all, working on and what we're building towards. That's really cool to me. And with our attorneys, I mean, every single attorney we have, I feel like has kind of caught that, right? And sort of shepherds that vision forward. So that's exciting to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've always talked about the idea of, kind of growing people or letting people grow the way they want to. And I think that's even maybe with some firms that have been around for 50 years, right? It's like, well, is that the same firm? And what I think we've done well, and I think we tried to be really deliberate with is truly being the same firm, right? And I think a big part of that is helping people do what they want to do. Like we will tell most new associates that come in, especially with less experience, like, sure, you're going to do some litigation, you're going to do some transactional work, you're going to get a broad base of knowledge, but we want you to work in the areas that
I
you
have
want
to
work.
correct you there, Lucas. What you normally tell associates when they come in is it's better to have to rein in a stallion than to have to kick a mule, right?
Well, there's some of that too. Yeah, that's definitely true. And and that is great advice if I say so myself. But we do. I mean, we want people to be happy. We want people to. I mean, really, that's what I tell them. Take my clients. Like that's the way I think associates grow. That's the way they can become successful. And do that in a way that I'm not going to send you to every kind of unhappy hearing that has to be had where everybody's going to be really upset with each other. Like I want you to enjoy what you're doing, and I do think you can do that best, right? If you've litigated some cases, you draft better contracts. If you've drafted some contracts, you litigate the cases better. But I think that, helping people grow into the lawyers they want to be is something that probably does go back to Stan and Brent, certainly, Mike and Rick through the years. I mean, that is, I always say, the two really kind of great, I guess, sort of pieces of advice I got. One from Rick was, I asked him a question, early days being an associate, and he said, well, did you read the rule? And I said, you know what, I'll be right back. And we had a much better conversation after I had read the rule. I think what Mike taught me, and Matt, I'm sure you'd agree, and Marianne probably as well, right, is just like fight for the reasonable ground, be the reasonable guy in a room, and, don't be the one taking unreasonable positions. And if you do that, you're going to come out ahead many more times than you come out behind.
Yeah. Well, and while we're sharing lessons of those that came before us, I think that's been one of the other things that's made our firm really successful is so many firms out there, I think, treat the practice of law kind of as a commodity, Someone comes in, they ask you to do something, you do the thing, and then you send them on their way. I think it's a different kind of firm and a different kind of philosophy to really be incredibly high touch, and really get to know what their business is, what they're doing, and build a relationship over time. It's just a very different, style of practice of law. And, getting back to Marianne, some of the points you made about kind of, again, sort of the early days of the firm all the way through, I feel like we still do that, and we're building on that every day. We have clients that just keep coming and building and sort of take us along for the ride because they like the support and the team mentality we bring. I'd like to think that that's out there with a lot of other firms, but it must not be, because we constantly hear that we're very unique in that respect. So hopefully we can continue that.
I agree completely. I think it's something that sets us apart. And, I think it is something that has carried on over the 50 years of the firm's existence.
So maybe to kind of close out this discussion, Lucas and then Marianne, I mean, maybe talk a little bit about what are we looking forward to as a firm this year as we kind of celebrate the 50th. It's sort of hard for us sometimes to stop and celebrate and acknowledge the milestones, but what does this mean to you, and kind of what are you looking forward to as we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think this year, I'm definitely looking forward to. I think we're going to do a few things throughout the year, definitely to pay some respects to the folks that have gotten us here. Social media and maybe some events and things that I think will be great. I mean, I think it's also sort of a good, just time to sit and say, like, 50 years. That's a lot of time. That's literally older than I am. And so, like, what do we need to do, and like, how can we think about making sure somebody else who probably only hears about us in stories is here at the 100-year, anniversary or whatever it is. So, I think doing some cool things this year, and definitely wanting to, do them with our clients, with the folks we work with, would be great. But, I think it's also a good time to figure out what we have to do to make sure we have 50 more years of success.
I think that one of the things for the 50th year, and we've talked a lot about it today, I think is to reflect on where we have been and ensuring that we maintain that history. And that probably goes to the statement that you just made, Lucas, of, in 50 years, what does this look like? So I do think that 50 years is a great time to reflect on where we've been and continue the many positive things about the firm for the next 50 years, and to plan ahead and to prepare for the future. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, again, this is an incredibly self-serving statement, but I love that we've sort of continued to keep the ego out of it, and that's one of the reasons that we've continued to succeed and grow, is that we're just kind of the kind of firm that nobody cares who takes credit for what's going well and what's gone well. And I think it's on us a little bit, and our other current partners to make sure that we continue to build on that momentum and hand off the torch, so to speak, in the future to the next generation, and all the great lawyers and staff that we have there that are going to continue to build. But I agree. I'm kind of excited, not to do that tomorrow, but for that transition to happen over time and to kind of see the firm continue to evolve. It's been more exciting than I could have imagined, right, when we started almost 20 years ago. And so it'll be fun to see what it looks like 20 years from now. Well, with that, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Hathaway Kunz podcast. We appreciate you taking time to hear a little bit about the history of the firm and hopefully where we're going in the future. Join us again as we come back for another episode.